Maple is probably one of the hardest woods to stain up and have it look really nice without being blotchy. Man, it may be something you're struggling with. There's lots of ways, not lots, but there's different ways to get a nice finish on maple. Probably the best way is a wash, coat, and stain, but that's not available to a lot of people. So I'm going to stain all these doors. I'm going to show you a good alternative and how I stain up doors with just using stain. And then I go back with some butyl acetate and fix it, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is how I stain up all these maple doors and get a really nice, even, nice looking maple finish. So what I'm using for stain is the Sherwin-Williams product, just their Sherwood, and it's not necessarily the best, but it works pretty good. So I always start on the back of the door and go ahead and stain it all. It's very helpful. It's really good to use one of these staining sponges. It works way better than just a rag. So after I get the back covered, I wipe it down with a dirty rag. And your stain is not necessarily going to look real good at this point. The idea is to get most of the color on and make sure you don't have any rag marks. And then go back over it with a clean rag, make sure you don't have any rag marks. Then I flip it up and do my edges. I do two of them and then wipe it and then flip it. Do the other two. Now this is where you go back and fix anything on the back, because you're going to have a little bit of stain from doing the edges. So wipe those off. And then try not to touch the back. Then on the front, make sure you get plenty down here in the edges, because in the winter time this panel will shrink a little bit and then you'll have a little white line around the edge, but if you get plenty it'll soak past there just a little bit. Then I try to halfway even it out with the sponge. And go around the edges. And it doesn't really matter. I usually start with the panel. And then make sure you go with the grain, and if you go across it, you'll see it. You'll see it. This store actually didn't stain horrible. Some of them are a lot worse. But right before in this next step, we'll mix up some butyl acetate with a little bit of stain, and I'll show you how to fix it and make it look really nice. So now we're just going to mix up about a 20% mixture of butyl acetate and the stain. And I have a whole set of doors to do, so I'm going to mix up about 20 ounces, but it doesn't really take very much. It goes a long ways. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want roughly about a 20% mixture. If you don't have to go very much, you can do 10%. So then when I go to fog it, I just look at the door and try to find the dark spots and the light spots and just hit the light spots. So this is the color we're aiming for. Right now it's a little too light, so we want to get closer to that. But this rail right here is pretty close, so I'm not really going to add any here. It's mostly going to be the panel, a little bit here and a little bit there. And you might have to do it in 2 coats, but don't put it on too thick because it'll pool a little bit and you'll see it. Let it kind of dry and flash off. And if you need to go a little darker, spray a little bit more. You can always add some, but if you go too dark, then you got to sand it down. This one's really bad. Pretty much these two are pretty close on the rails. The panel and the stiles are really light, so we'll probably have to hit it a couple times. Once you do that a couple times, it's going to look nice and uniform like that. Then just seal it and top coat it like normal.